Today's episode is brought to you by We Break You Buy. Interested in sports cards and memorabilia? Check out We Break You Buy on TikTok. We Break You Buy is a small operation run by three brothers, offering spots for a chance at winning some incredible sports cards and memorabilia. That's We Break You Buy. Check it out today on TikTok. This is going to be a fun one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Why Wasn't It Better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
We have a return guest who is very much a veteran of the podcast at this point. Peter Baldeo, welcome back for your third James Bond movie.
Yeah. Welcome back, Pete.
Thank you. Now, I've seen two different actors, I think.
Yeah, you have. You've seen Daniel Craig. Well, you've seen some Pierce Brosnan ones, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. 3 actors.
This is very much the latter stage of Connery.
Yes.
I think that's pretty evident.
Yeah, the weight gain was significant in HD. I don't know if you caught that. It really looks like he put on 40 pounds since the last film.
He is a larger man. That is quite
still look good. I mean, still very handsome. But we're here to talk about Diamonds Are Forever. And we are recording this so far in advance, it's possible that this may not be released until like 4 or 5 months from now. But the reason we wanted to record this one so far in advance is, Peter, I hope you don't mind me saying, but you are going to be quite busy very soon. You have a significant life change happening, and you were wise enough to inform me that your recording time may be limited. So
Yes, I think better said, our life is going really well. Things are going great. What better way to bring something great into this world and create chaos than having a daughter? So we are expecting our first daughter on March 25th, but apparently that's like give or take plus or minus 3 weeks is what I've learned. So yes, my life will be rather busy, but we're excited. We're pumped to be parents. We're kind of the last ones out of our friends to be parents.
But I wanted you to say that because I always like to respect the guest's privacy. Some guests don't like anything to be revealed about their personal lives, which is totally fine.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean,
well, look, we have a ton of notes to get through today. So I think, Anton, in the interest of time, we should skip any admin, we should skip the pleasantries, and we should dive right into this film.
Agreed. Let's do it.
Right to business. I love it.
James Bond goes undercover to impersonate a diamond smuggler to infiltrate a smuggling ring, and soon uncovers a plot by his old enemy, Ernest Stavro Blofeld, to use the diamonds to build a space-based laser weapon. Bond has to battle his enemy one last time to stop the smuggling and stall Blofeld's plan of destroying Washington, D.C. and extorting the world with nuclear supremacy. Released on December 17th, 1971 by Eon Productions and United Artists, directed by Guy Hamilton, screenplay by Tom Mankiewicz and Richard Maybaum, loosely based on the novel by Ian Fleming. Starring Sean Connery, Jill St. John, Charles Gray, Lana Wood, Bruce Glover, Putter Smith, Jimmy Dean, Norman Burton, and Bruce Cabot. A budget of $7 million, so that's $54 million adjusted for inflation, with a box office at $116 million, so $881 million adjusted for inflation. Welcome to Diamonds Are Forever.
As far as why I wanted to do this movie, obviously, we've already made it clear that we're covering a majority of the Bond movies on this podcast. Yeah, we're doing them in release order, but there are few Bonds that I have been looking forward to covering more than this. So this was the 7th official film in the series. After a 1-film hiatus, Sean Connery returned to the role for his final official appearance. He would, of course, appear as Bond for a 7th time 12 years after this in Never Say Never Again, which we've already covered, but that was not an official Eon production. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which was the 6th film in the Eon series, that was a one-off starring George Lazenby. It was successful at the box office, but it grossed about $30 million less than You Only Live Twice. Now, in today's money, we are talking about a $400 million drop off. So Eon and United Artists considered it a disappointment. Connery's return was a huge deal at the time, and the box office performance very much proved it. Audiences were thrilled to have him back. I mean, Anton, you just read the box office numbers for us when you introed it. I mean, a
Yeah.
$54 million budget and it makes 880. That's a pretty phenomenal return.
Yeah, people were excited.
They were. I did ask my dad about this, in preparation for this podcast. I'm like, how excited were you all to have Connery back? And he was like, yeah, everyone was like thrilled. It was like universal excitement for it because nobody was really liking George Lazenby in 1969. This film, though,
so sad. Please, sorry,
for
Pat,
George
sorry.
Lazenby?
Yeah.
We are going to cover that film, but like just to give you some context on that, they offered him a multi-film contract and he turned it down on the advice of his agent. His agent told him that James Bond would not be relevant in the 70s and it wasn't worth pursuing.
That didn't age well.
It didn't. I mean, to be fair though, how many other franchises have been around this long?
Fast and the Furious. No, I'm being facetious, obviously, but
Well,
you're right though.
This long and having someone
Yeah.
tied to it, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
partly
That's
facetious,
not animated.
but yeah.
That's not animated.
Right. This film, Diamonds Are Forever, it was very popular at the time. It was well liked at the time that it came out, too. And I think it had a reputation of being like, oh, it's a Connery one. It's one of the good ones. And I remember even as a little kid, when I first started watching this series, this was kind of presented to me as like one of the good ones, but its reputation has changed over time. It's seen today as one of the lesser entries. And I wanted to cover this not only because it's a Bond movie, but because of how utterly insane this movie is. This is one of the biggest outliers in the series. It is one of the strangest mainstream films that I have ever seen. Not just for a Bond movie. Like, if you really think about this in the context of what happens in this movie, like, this is banana nut bread crazy.
Oh, yeah. Just over the top.
I don't think it's a very good movie at all. We're certainly going to get into it. But for whatever reason, this is one of the ones that I rewatch the most. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. Pete, recently you saw this for the first time, and Anton, you saw it for the first time in a very long time.
That's right. And I'll tell you right now, I don't remember it being that crazy.
Interesting.
Now, Peter, I warned you, right?
You did warn me.
Were you prepared for how weird it was?
No, I didn't take you seriously. And full disclosure to the listeners, Pat texted me and was like, I'll give you $100 if you can explain the plot of this movie to me. So I'm going to hold true to that and try to explain it. But I was so confident going into it. I was like, this is going to be a joke. I'm going to get it. Watching that movie, the only other movie I was more confused about watching was Tenet. And I've seen that movie like 6 times and I still have no idea what's going on. With that being said, no, I was surprised in an unemotional way, I guess is the best way to put it, because it just wasn't very good. So does the bet still stand? Can I explain it to the listeners?
You can try when we get to it.
All right.
I already know you're not going to be successful.
I'm going to do my best, but I think I'm pretty close. Also, I don't think banana nut bread is crazy because I like banana nut bread.
Well, I just meant in reference to like nutty.
Yeah, we're just going to exponentially increase the amount of nuts.
Okay, I missed that. Probably because I'm hungry. Sorry.
Production history. So when On Her Majesty's Secret Service was in post-production, Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, the producers, they were already thinking about the next film, originally under the assumption that George Lazenby would actually be playing Bond. Richard Maybaum wrote several drafts about Bond avenging the death of his wife, Tracy. The characters Irma Bunt and Mark-Ange Draco were set to return. Now, following Lazenby's departure from the series, a complete rewrite was requested. So Maybaum wrote an original script with Auric Goldfinger's twin brother seeking revenge for the death of his brother. In this version, Goldfinger's brother was a Swedish shipping magnate armed with a laser cannon held within the hull of a supertanker. The idea was borrowed from an early draft of On Her Majesty's Secret Service in which Blofeld was to be Goldfinger's twin brother, with Gert Frobe set to return. The film would have ended with a boat chase on Lake Mead. The plot was later changed after Broccoli had a dream where his friend Howard Hughes was replaced by an imposter. Hence, the character of Willard White was created and Tom Mankiewicz was chosen to rework the script. For some podcast history, Tom Mankiewicz was the son of Joseph Mankiewicz, who had ended up directing Cleopatra. He was a big name in Hollywood, and he directed many other successful films. His brother Herman was one of the writers of Citizen Kane. Tom Mankiewicz would go on to write or co-write 2 more Bond films, the next 2 after this, Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. He also contributed to the Christopher Reeve Superman series. So he had a really nice career. Mankiewicz says he was hired because Broccoli wanted an American writer to work on the script. He says around 45 minutes of the film is his material. And the idea of Goldfinger's brother was scrapped, so Blofeld was written back into the script. Peter Hunt, who had directed On Her Majesty's Secret Service, he was already committed to another project at the time they wanted to film this. So the producers asked Guy Hamilton to return after previously directing Goldfinger. This was the first Bond production to be primarily based in the United States rather than the UK. The producers considered replacing Lazenby with John Gavin, although Clint Eastwood, Adam West, Burt Reynolds, Robert Wagner, Brett Halsey, Malcolm Roberts, and Ranulph Fiennes had been considered. Broccoli and Saltzman tried to get Roger Moore, but he was busy filming The Persuaders.
Does Ranulph Fiennes have any relation to Ralph Fiennes?
Yes, same family.
Got it. Okay. Sorry for the interjection. Proceed.
No, good question. I wondered the same when I was doing the research. I'm like, that sounds suspiciously familiar.
I was like, that name's way too similar.
Yes, his real name is Tom Riddle Sr. Now, John Gavin was given a contract before the studio intervened and demanded that Connery be brought back. So John Gavin was paid out by the studio. So pretty good deal for John Gavin. He got a full salary for doing no work. And this is noteworthy because it was the first time in the history of Bond that the studio overruled Broccoli and Saltzman by forcing them to do something. Now, the pair of them had, quote, misgivings about bringing Connery back, but they, quote, couldn't ignore United Artists' insistence, end quote.
Connery was paid $1.25 million, which he donated to a Scottish charity. And United Artists also agreed to back 2 other films of his choosing. The first one was The Offense, directed by Sidney Lumet. The other never got made. So Connery made no secret about money being his motivation for returning to the role. And Connery still had enough of a beef with Saltzman that there was a clause in his contract barring Saltzman from the set whenever Connery was filming. Musician Paul Williams was originally cast as Mr. Wint, but was replaced by Bruce Glover after asking for too much money. Harry Saltzman, cast jazz musician Putter Smith, was cast as Mr. Kidd. And remember that at the time, On Her Majesty's Secret Service was seen as a disappointment, so the producers set out to make the film as different as possible. And they really did. That camp factor was dialed up to a 10. Was it a bit more in the realm of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? Hey, listeners, we'll talk more about it. The budget was $7 million, so less than Thunderball and You Only Live Twice, and the same as On Her Majesty's Secret Service. They were paying Connery so much money that they were in cost savings mode from the get-go. And filming began in April 1971. All the South African stuff was actually filmed in Nevada. And because Cubby Broccoli was friends with Howard Hughes, who owned many casinos in Las Vegas, the production had a carte blanche to film pretty much anywhere they wanted in Las Vegas at any time. And Sean Connery made the most of his time on location in Las Vegas. He said, quote, "I didn't get any sleep at all. We shot every night. I caught all the shows and played golf all day," end quote. And Connery dated his co-stars Lana Wood and Jill St. John. It's safe to say he had a fun time on set. And Sammy Davis Jr. filmed a cameo that was eventually cut. And if anyone is, as myself, big fan of classic film posters, this one is in that same category of very cool movie posters.
Yeah, Pete, I don't know if you've ever checked out the old school Bond posters. They're pretty awesome.
Oh.
They're art.
They really are. They don't make posters like this anymore. And coincidentally enough, I have a small version of the movie poster for this film in one of my bathrooms in my home.
Oh, these are kind of sick.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, these are dope.
Yeah, so that's the production history. Connery made out really well from this. I mean, it was kind of him to donate to charity, but he got to date 2 of his co-stars and play golf and go to shows and not take anything seriously.
And there's just so many Venture Bros references, but we can dive in and we'll dive into those Venture Bros references later.
There's plenty of them. It's time to talk about why wasn't it better. Number 1, I want to start with the tone. The turn from the action spy thriller genre into the action comedy silly parody genre was a pretty major heel turn for the series. Pete, you were with us when we discussed You Only Live Twice. Now, I would describe that film as having camp, but not overly campy.
Yes, agreed. It was a Bond movie. This
Mhm.
was a movie with the actor that was Bond in it. Like
Yes.
it just it felt weird. It's funny. I couldn't. It sounds ridiculous. I took notes and I couldn't figure out what the word was until you said the tone, and then I was like, okay, I think you've hit it. It just didn't feel like a Bond movie, right? It felt like Austin Powers before Austin
It's a
Powers.
huge outlier in the series,
Mhm.
and you're right to bring up Austin Powers. This is a full blown comedy. There is not a single thing in this film you can take seriously. It has far more in common with Austin Powers than it does James Bond.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And so I think just to recap for the listeners, I criticized this movie by seeing certain ones in the series by accident. I never saw the older ones. So I just want to frame that in context. I've seen all the newer ones, I've seen the Brosnan ones, and I'm slowly seeing the older ones. So, and I'm seeing them out of however they were released. So just so everyone understands that, that's where I'm.
The Roger Moore era would get pretty campy. You will often hear that Moonraker is the silliest, campiest, goofiest entry in the series. I disagree with that sentiment. I'm putting this ahead of Moonraker. Coming off on Her Majesty's Secret Service, this is downright jarring, the tonal switch here.
Mhm.
Anton, I know you've seen Moonraker. Like, would you agree with that or disagree?
I agree, and I think like one of the reasons why is even you can look. I think the context of On Her Majesty's Secret Service being before this shows that this was a very deliberate course correction. And when you consider that context, it's amazing to see how the tone of the film just came off just bonkers.
It's bonkers, and it is. I used the word weird earlier when I was explaining why I chose this film. It really
Mhm.
is weird. It's awkwardly weird.
Yeah, I thought so. Within the first 5 minutes, when there's that opening scene where he's going to kill fake Blofeld and then real Blofeld, and then
Right?
Blofeld's like having mud dumped on him, but then it turns out he's not real Blofeld, and then he just tosses the guy into the mud pit, and that's it. I was like, it's kind of a weird way for a Bond movie to start. I
I
was
didn't know
like,
that's how plastic surgery worked.
Or
that's
just
what I was thinking. I was like, I guess, it was 1971, so you have to evaluate it with everything that they knew in 1971. So I'm like, oh, I guess
Right. I don't think that's how it worked in 1971 either, but
Mm-mm.
that
you
was my
know,
thought. So,
That's a no, I was gonna say that's a production budgetary constraint.
oh yeah, and it was just like liquid soup, and then Blofeld, supposedly the most dangerous guy on the planet, who's about to engineer this hostage situation of the nuclear powers of the world, just gets tossed into liquid mud, and that's it. That's how he dies, supposedly.
right.
No, come on, I didn't
Right.
buy that.
Awkwardly weird.
I thought that was gonna change by the end of the movie. I thought I was like, okay, what is that having me do here? And then I
I
realized that it just continued until actually the end.
that
I think the final like 25 minutes felt like a Bond movie.
a shitty Bond movie.
I didn't say it was good. I said a Bond
Yeah.
movie.
Well, we'll explain that a little bit later, but
Okay.
so I was trying to put this in context of like how weird is this movie? It is one of the weirder like overall movies that I've ever seen. Between Blofeld and the Doubles, Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, the weirdly randomly racist gorilla show in the casino,
Super weird. Didn't know about that. That was odd.
all of the casino stuff in general with the kids and the circus and then
Mhm.
Plenty.
Willard White, Tiffany Case, the moon landing scene, the space laser, like this. I don't think I've ever really seen a movie like this, and I almost want to give it some props for it.
Yeah.
I have The Spy Who Shagged Me and International Man of Mystery. Goldmember was up there.
That's true,
Yeah,
but
that's
those were like deliberate parodies, which
Yeah.
I guess this is too.
Did they sit down at that table when they were coming up with a concept for this idea and say, we're going to make something that's totally not a Bond movie? Or
Yes.
did they say, this is going to be a super cool secret agent movie where he goes to impersonate a diamond thief?
I think they would downplay it now because of how retroactively well regarded On Her Majesty's Secret Service has become. But it really was seen as a disappointment in 1969 when it came out, and they really did make every effort to make this as different as possible. And you could say they succeeded.
They definitely did. It worked. Different was what they were aiming for.
I feel like the tone shift was just more so looking at it from the perspective of like, how do we, okay, we know that we went in a very different direction in the previous film. Let's course correct. Let's do Bond Mad Libs and insert Blofeld. Bond goes to exotic location, like use the same template again. And it just came off as very uninspired. And so then to kind of make it feel less uninspired, why not fluff it up a bit?
I will say this, and this is, I think, a point in the film's favor. At least the tone is consistent.
Fair. I think that's fair criticism.
There is no point in this film where you are asked to take anything seriously. It is goofy from start to finish.
Yep.
This is something that I think when we get to them, Anton, future films in the series would struggle with. Actually, we already talked about this a little bit on Spectre, how there's some really goofy moments in Spectre, and then there's some really serious melodrama, even in No Time to Die, which, Peter, you were on for that one.
Yes.
There's some weird tonal shifts in that one, too.
Right.
Yeah, it takes you on a journey, right? It's a Bond movie with some deep emotional discovery at the same time.
Yeah, this is consistent.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think that's fair. If you know what it feels like, it feels like a modern day. You know how like Disney would have like the Marvel Universe, and then they spun their crappy shows off on Disney Plus. This feels like it would have been like a Disney Plus. Oh, sorry, it's MGM Plus, like an MGM Plus spin-off of the Bond universe. Like,
I want to talk about the moon landing scene.
Oh my gosh.
This was great.
The astronauts moving in slow motion.
That was gold. That was the best thing I've ever seen in the life.
I crack up every time I watch this movie. I've probably seen this movie 30 times. Anton, you've seen almost all of them. Is this the weirdest scene in the entire series?
It's so funny because there was already other scenes in this one film that were so awkward and weird. Fake moon landing definitely did not land well in Diamonds Are Forever.
It just makes me laugh. The moon buggy chase that follows is just so weird. It's hilarious.
I kept like, the entire time I was thinking, I was like, why does a highly trained MI6 agent need to be doing this? I was like, I feel like I could do this. I'm not highly trained. I was like, he's driving around in this thing. He didn't do anything that a secret agent wouldn't do besides like sneaking places in a suit.
That's one of my favorite things about the movie, though, is he does do some kind of spy stuff where he pretends to be the Dutch guy. Remember when he what's the smuggler's name? Peter Franks, when he kills him in the elevator, which, by the way, is a really cool fight.
Yes, in the elevator.
And he's just like, I speak English. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And then the Klaus Hergersheimer scene.
The best. I love it.
How are things in G section?
I love the suspense, like the looks on their faces when the actual guy comes in, and you just see it, and everyone in the room knows, and everyone sees it, but they continue the scene. Was one of the best scenes in the movie.
It's great. That's really good comedy.
Yeah.
Like, there is some comedy in here, I think, that really works.
It worked really well.
We talked about Connery a little bit earlier. I love his performance in this. He's completely out of shape. He looks completely bored. He's completely checked out. But I think it works for the film. He is matching the tone. I think he's one of the most intelligent actors we've ever had. He was very aware of how ridiculous this film was going to be, and I think he played it perfectly.
Yeah, he did. He fit right in.
So this is like a perfect storm of ridiculous plot and enough of natural, no care charisma.
I think so, because I've read a lot of criticism about his performance in this movie, just how checked out he is and how obviously out of shape he was. I think it works. He really shows how gifted of a comedic actor he could be. His timing, his mannerisms, they're hilarious. The scene where he kills Peter Franks and switches the wallets, his timing when she goes, "Oh my God, you just killed James Bond," and he gives her this pause, he looks at her and he's like, "Is that who it was?"
Yeah.
It's so great. Like, he really pulls, there's not a lot of actors that could do that kind of comedy.
Yeah, it worked. It worked for him, man.
But when I say out of shape, he really does look like one prime rib dinner away from being pudgy.
Yeah, the suits are noticeably bigger than the movie he did a few years prior.
Yeah, I mean, did he really need another drink at this point?
No, and the entire movie, he's just slamming drinks. Also, what was with that weird tension between him and like the director when they were talking about the sherry?
Oh, with M?
Yeah, what was that weird tension about? I don't
know. It's really funny though, because he gives him shit for killing Blofeld, which is like,
isn't that what they wanted?
Right. You would think though. What does he say to him? He's just like, "Blofeld's dead. Now you can finally do some real work." He's like, "What?"
Yeah, like
so. Yeah, try making sense of that.
It doesn't make sense.
It was weird. I didn't understand why they were like insulting each other, and I was like, I'm pretty sure you guys are on the same team, and you're talking about who knows who's better. Okay, whatever. I guess that's a cool thing to flex over.
He's a real dick in this movie, Bond. But he leaves Plenty O'Toole's body in the pool. He's just lounging around reading a magazine. He slaps Tiffany Case around. It's really edgy, and it hasn't aged well at all. It's just really, it's not great.
I feel like wait, I guess this would still be under this section. I feel like Tiffany Case, you could have done this entire movie without Tiffany Case. I feel like she was there to just be the naked girl.
I have questions about her that we're going to get to.
Okay, I'll save it.
Specifically, when we try to break down the supply chain of the diamond smuggling.
Can't wait. I can't wait. It's probably the wildest supply chain I've ever seen in my life. Like,
It's certainly the most questionable.
Yeah, it's definitely not secure. I'll tell you that for sure.
I think if you view this as a goofball comedy, I think it is pretty successful. It's memorable. It's super quotable. It has some great one-liners in it. That's where I think if you want to give this movie its props, it's that stuff, right? When he gets picked up at the airport by the employees of Slumber Inc., that one guy, he's got some great lines. He's like, the stiff, the deceased, your brother? He's like, yes, it was. The guy's like, I got a brother. Small world.
First of all,
that guy.
I give him props to the great name of the funeral home.
Slumber Inc.
Slumber Inc. Spectacular.
Yeah, it's great. That building's still in Las Vegas, by the way. It's all built up now, but it's still there.
Oh, it's. I think it was even just having scenes like that is just trying to pander to or trying to make mention of Las Vegas mob ties, which really ended up having no connection to the plot of the film at all.
No, it didn't. I think the only reason they did that is because the novel Diamonds Are Forever is all about the mob. Like Blofeld is not in the novel. It does involve diamond smuggling, but it's all the mafia.
Makes more sense.
By the way, that guy who goes like the stiff, he has one of my all-time favorite movie lines later on when they toss Plenty out the window and Connery goes, that was an exceptionally fine shot. And he just goes, I didn't know there was a pool down there.
Dude just tried to commit murder.
Threw it right out the window. I was like,
what a line. The movie does have great dialogue.
It's amazing dialogue. And like later on, we get the trope that was parodied in so many movies, 10 minutes and counting.
Oh my gosh.
For all the jokes that land, though, there are some that don't. We mentioned the racist gorilla show. I don't know who or how they came up with that. Yeah. I don't know if that was a thing in casinos at the time.
I know. I was watching it and I was like, is this just like a thing of the times?
The elephant with pulling the slot machine.
Yeah, that stuff
was weird.
It's pretty bad. It was hinted at in You Only Live Twice, and I think we talked about it on that episode, but this, Anton, was really the start of the trend where James Bond is apparently a world-famous celebrity. It's nonsensical that Tiffany Case would know who he is. She's just some random diamond smuggler, and she knows who James Bond is. It doesn't make any sense.
I was thinking that too, because wouldn't she know what James Bond looks like if he was that, renowned?
It was the same. It was my same confusion when we were seeing You Only Live Twice, and it was that question of, wait, why would James Bond's death be in the paper, or why do all these spies know about his death in the paper, and then suddenly everyone in the world knows who James Bond is? It's just, I guess, he's not doing a great job of revealing, of concealing his identity.
I feel like that's number one on the list, right? Of being a secret agent. Tell no one that you're a secret agent, because then aren't you just an agent at that point?
That was the funniest part of You Only Live Twice to me, how he faked his own death, and then within 15 minutes, he's just name dropping himself all over Tokyo.
He's back. He's back from the dead.
But the rest of the tone, the wisecracking children in the casino, like, kids don't belong in a Bond movie. I think they're probably the first time in the series you ever saw kids. It's weird. All the back chat, although it is funny to hear Tiffany Case tell a kid blow up your pants. It's kind of weird, but it's funny.
Yeah.
And then we get Bambi and Thumper.
These were the security agents selected to protect the guy that is supposed to be isolated and protected in his mansion.
Yes, they were apparently holding Willard White hostage.
Got it.
I guess.
Seems legit.
Yeah, they did not questionable at all.
They did not definitely seem very, how do I say, competent.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of look like they were just hanging out at the house.
Yeah, they definitely were hanging out.
Like that's what the security.
He didn't appear to be a hostage. I don't know.
He definitely didn't. And if that's the case, I mean, I guess that's an ideal way to be a hostage, I guess.
I mean, I was just waiting for him to say that they're after my Jimmy Dean sausage recipe. Secret recipe.
Oh, Pete. Yeah, I don't know if you caught that. That Jimmy Dean who plays Willard White, that is the Jimmy Dean Sausage King.
What?
That's him. Yes.
The guy.
What is he doing in a Bond movie?
He was a country singer who lent his name to the sausage company, and it's stuck ever since. And for whatever reason, he was cast in this movie.
Oh, dude, country singers. First of all, R.I.P. to Toby Keith. Sorry about that tangent. I know he's well loved in the country community.
He sure was.
I'm not a big
Yes, he
country
was.
fan, but I respect a good artist, and R.I.P. 62, young age. But that is wild to know. I didn't know that he was a jack of all trades, producing sausage, acting, and also a musician.
I actually really like his performance as Willard White. I think he's hilarious.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. The Bert
When,
Saxby thing, I was that time.
Oh yeah, when he gets shot and he's like, "Is that Bert Saxby? Tell him he's fired."
I loved it. I was dying. This is great.
Also, I don't know if I had that in the notes, but it's a plot hole I just thought about. How does Bert Saxby know to show up there if Bond was impersonating Saxby when he called Blofeld? Saxby just shows up there with a rifle. That doesn't make sense.
Does not make sense.
That's a good point.
As far as the tone goes, Anton, we were talking about this before the recording. This movie has a really strange sleaziness to it, which is not present in anything else in the series. Bond movies are really known for being classy, elegant, high society. This is very seedy, right?
Yeah.
You can just smell the stale cigarettes.
Yeah. Do you think at all that was there? Part of that was on purpose to create a seedier vibe?
It had to be.
Yeah.
They would go back to the classiness in future films, right? This must have been deliberate on their part.
Yeah, maybe they wanted to aim for something different. Because it seems like
they got it.
You know, I heard this in Suits one time, right? That it was like, oh, in order to fail the test, you need to know all the right answers. I feel like that's what they did with this movie. They knew what type of Bond movie worked, and they were like, let's just do the opposite of that and see what happened.
There's a couple of lines of dialogue that I want to mention before we move on to the next reason. Really low key, just hilariously good lines. When Tiffany asks Bond if he prefers blonde or brunettes, he says, "Oh, providing the collars and cuffs match." Really, really good line. Never heard that before. We already mentioned, is that who it was? And then, of course, I think maybe the bombshell. Hi, I'm Plenty. But of course you are. Plenty O'Toole, named after your father, perhaps?
And Plenty just happened to be at the table waiting for someone to give her money. Is she a prostitute?
She was. I thought that
one
she
step
was
above, maybe.
An escort.
Yeah, I think she's like if you've ever seen the movie Casino, she's like Sharon Stone.
Got it.
Oh, so she's a prostitute.
Yeah.
Pretty much a prostitute.
She's an escort,
yeah.
Anton.
Oh,
right.
sorry.
Yeah.
Escort.
Right.
It's different.
Right. When they're dead, they're just hookers.
Archer.
Right.
Wait.
Exactly.
Oh man, dude, I've been rewatching it lately at the gym in the morning. It's fantastic. It's the best way to start your day.
So rewatchable.
Yeah.
Blofeld has a lot of funny lines too. We haven't even talked about Blofeld. We haven't even talked about Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd. I'm saving that for a special section because we can do a whole podcast episode on Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd.
What? Okay.
It's time to move on to the next reason, which is the plot, or whatever this movie is trying to pass off as a plot.
Jeez.
We were talking about the pre-title sequence a bit already. It's got some of the worst dialogue of the series. Cairo!
Was the voice acting off? Like, because there was none of it.
Oh, it was way off.
There was just no dubbing. And I was like...
Horrible ADR.
I grew up watching, like, Enter the Dragon with my grandma. Like, she loved stuff like that. And I was like, come on, man.
It was really bad.
The dubbing was...
Yeah.
Come on.
The way the fake Blofeld tries to kill Bond, it really is like watching Austin Powers when he like lunges at him with the knife. It's just, I think, Pete, you started to get into this earlier, how Bond he's sort of doing spy work, but he's mostly just stumbling into things in every situation.
Yeah, he doesn't have like I feel like Bond usually has a plan. Like he's like, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to infiltrate the island lair. We're going to sneak upstairs, we're going to disable the nuclear bombs, and then we're going to get out. And in this one, it just kind of seems like MI6 was like, well, you're going to go over here, you're going to kind of figure this out, and then you're just going to kind of adapt, evolve, and overcome, and eventually we hope you get the information that we need.
And then you're going to powwow with Jimmy Dean.
Yeah. By the way, there's going to be a sausage guy there pushing his country album.
Willard White speaking.
Which, to be fair, I was actually pretty impressed by his performance.
Jimmy Dean?
Oh yeah, I thought it was fun.
I love Jimmy Dean's performance in this movie. He's hilarious.
I thought it was very good.
I think the stumbling around thing probably happens more in the Bond series than we care to admit.
Yeah, but it looks better when it's done in an Aston Martin.
This looks
and with cool gadgets.
The situations he gets into in here, it is memorable, but I was thinking about this, and I really love how Bond's mission is essentially to help De Beers continue to enforce their monopoly on the world's diamond market via artificial scarcity. If you think about it, that's basically what he's being asked to do.
I remember reading the plot of this movie and I was
Ugh.
like, so he's just perpetuating worldwide capitalism? I was like,
Yes.
kind of
Yep.
badass, but all right, I'm in for it. Let's see how this goes.
It's clear who's funding MI6.
Yeah.
Right?
We were getting into this before, too. I like the scene where Bond and M meet Sir Donald. The explanation of the diamond stuff, I think it's pretty well done exposition, at least until they get into the actual plot, where he's basically giving expository dialogue of how the diamond operation works, and then it's cutting to Wint and Kidd, and then it cuts back to Bond and M and Sir Donald in the office. But at least he offers him sherry, right? Commander
Right.
Bond,
Yeah.
sherry? Precisely.
That's actually pretty good. I
Right?
think shout out to I think it was Q. Q's the gadget guy, right?
Of course.
M's the leader.
Yes.
Q, I like him. I don't know who the actor was. I found every time he was on screen, I feel like they should have put more of him.
Desmond Llewellyn?
I liked it. I thought he added, like, when you're watching this movie, you're looking for people that kind of stand out as you're just wading through whatever you're watching. And to me, he stood out. I don't know why, but I liked his performances. I liked what he was doing, and I loved the casino scene where he's just ripping off the slot.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Q's a legend.
Yeah, I know. I just wish they gave him more screen time than he had.
Well, I mean, he is in pretty much every film all the way up to The World Is Not Enough. So I mean, you're right to like him. Like, he is a fan favorite. They kept him around until 1999 when he rather tragically passed away.
Mhm.
He was pretty old. He died in a car crash with his wife.
Was this
Very sad.
And I don't know this because I've seen the later ones. The supporting members of the organization like Q and M, did they use those actors as they were changing Bonds, or did they change them as well?
Okay, Desmond Llewellyn played Q from Russia with Love in 1963 all the way up to The World Is Not Enough with Pierce Brosnan in 1999.
Okay, that's what I was
M
asking.
has changed hands a couple of times. So the guy that plays M in this film, he is in every film from the very first one, Dr. No, up until 1979, Moonraker. He got sick and died, so they had to replace him.
Okay, and then
There was an M in the 80s, and then Judi Dench took over as M with Pierce Brosnan in the 90s. And then since Casino Royale is a reboot, her playing M in the Daniel Craig series is sort of a different character for all intents and purposes.
got it. Okay.
And of course, you can't forget the ever fun John Cleese is Q. Oh, right, R.
Yeah.
Letters.
Yeah, well, so the plot. I would say this is easily the worst plot in the entire series. Almost none of it holds up to scrutiny. Let's try to go through the diamond smuggling plot. I think it's going to take the combined brain power of all three of us. Okay. Like I said, I have seen this film all the way through probably 30 times, and I still am not clear on how this supply chain works. So who knows who, like, why are there so many steps and cutouts and people involved? If Blofeld is impersonating White and using his empire, why doesn't he just buy diamonds?
Oh, what I would think too. They didn't figure that out. Okay, so let's try to backtrack.
Blofeld doesn't want to leave a paper trail.
Yeah, here's what I have so far, right? I took some pretty good notes on the last rewatch. Okay, so the miners are obviously smuggling the diamonds out of the mines, right? We can agree on that.
Yes,
Right.
got
Fair.
that.
Okay. It then goes to the dentist,
Joe,
who is supposed to give it to Joe, who is then supposed to give it to the helicopter pilot, right?
Yep.
Who presumably then gives it to Mrs. Whistler,
Yes.
who then drops it off to Tiffany Case. We know that because Tiffany Case, as a little old lady, dropped this off yesterday, and then we later see her drowned in one of the canals in Amsterdam. And then once Tiffany Case has it, Peter Franks, who Bond impersonates, he is supposed to enter the picture and smuggle the diamonds to America to Slumber Inc. and Shady Tree, who then is supposed to give it to Bert Saxby, who then brings it to Blofeld's lab in the desert where they're making the laser thing.
And they needed the diamonds for the laser thing, right?
Right.
Yes.
Because the diamonds made the laser thing more lasery.
Pete, you're married to a doctor. I mean, like, can you get an opinion on this?
What am I supposed to say to her?
Do diamonds make lasers more
Well, I mean,
lasery?
obviously, Pete, you need to have her watch this and explain the plot to us. She can also explain if that's how plastic surgery works with like mashed potatoes on your face or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Or if that was just a belief in the 70s. Okay. So I think your understanding of the supply chain seems to make sense.
But it doesn't make sense.
But like it just seems like you ever heard of the guy named Rube Goldberg, which
Right.
he
Oh, of course. This is absolutely
like
Yeah.
this just feels like listen, man, you can just open the door and you'll be where you need to be. They said, you know what? No, we're gonna walk downstairs. We're gonna go outside to the neighbor's house. We're gonna go into the backyard, walk across, and then we're gonna try to get in through the second floor, and then we're gonna get there. It just seems like they took the most complicated way around. 1. Criminal enterprise 101. Eliminate steps in the supply chain. This seems like a lot of money to be changing hands quite often, all the time, and a lot of people that can rat you out when they figure out where the diamonds are going.
Well, that's why Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd are tying up all the loose ends.
The 2 serial killers in the movie that don't even look like assassins? No, sorry.
Well, here's the question, right? So they're working for Blofeld, right? We never
Right.
actually see them interact with Blofeld, but we can assume that they are.
There was a lot of assuming.
Yeah, I mean, so okay, hang on. Before I even get to Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, I think I left out a couple of key steps in the supply chain, right? Okay, so
I can't wait for this.
So
Okay.
Bond is impersonating Franks. He doesn't give Slumber and Shady Tree the real diamonds, right? Because they almost hold on. He almost gets immolated in that coffin by Wint and Kidd, which, by the way, horrible way to die.
Yeah.
But so then they open the coffin and they're like, wait, these are fake. Okay, so then he's still impersonating Franks. He goes back to Tiffany, who then gets the diamonds and then smuggles them out via the racist casino gorilla show thing.
Yep.
So Tiffany, she gets the diamonds back, and then there's an airport locker, and then that guy, Professor Dr. Metz, gets his hands on them, and then he takes it back to the desert lab.
Yeah, that's about it.
And the key question here is why?
Yeah, so like,
Right.
why doesn't Blofeld just go to the mine in Africa and then buy diamonds, and then
It's not clear.
just
It's
either
not
A,
clear.
use his super powered serial killer assassins to just kill everyone there, or B, pay them in cash because it's the 70s and then they leave no paper trail, or I said A, B, and C.
I mean,
Well,
yeah.
you
Or-
didn't even mention the scorpion death.
Nuts. By the way, wrote that down. God discuss that. Or lastly,
Hilarious.
why not just pay someone else to get diamonds for you instead of taking the most complicated path to get diamonds back to you? Like, hey, Dr. Meds, do me a
Yeah.
favor. Go pick up this package and bring it back to our secret desert lab, which you're helping me here because you obviously know that we need it.
I have like so many more questions about the plot. I know we're not going to be able to answer all of them, but here we go. So the scorpion death, I don't really have a question about that other than scorpions aren't really that venomous. And that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen when they drop it down his shirt. He's just, they kill the dentist with the scorpion down the back, classic scorpion death.
Instantaneously, nonetheless.
Right. Which, by the way, not that venomous.
Yeah.
Nothing is.
I'm also pretty sure the most dangerous snake on the planet kills you in like 7 minutes. Not
Right.
instantaneously.
Also, that was supposed to be South Africa, and it's like very clearly filmed in Nevada.
I was gonna say that's the desert in
Yeah,
Nevada.
that's the desert.
Is that Las Vegas?
Okay, and then they kill the guy in the helicopter, right? So they presumably don't give him the diamonds. But then if the helicopter pilot was just there to collect the diamonds, couldn't they have just like not met him? Like why go through the trouble of killing him? He never touched the diamonds.
Because he's a
then-
loose end. He's not dead.
Yeah, I guess. So they killed a helicopter pilot. Why do they bother giving Mrs. Whistler the diamonds? Like Wint and Kidd take over as part of the supply chain, and then they have her bring the diamonds to Amsterdam and then murder her anyway. They're creating their own loose ends. They're padding their stats.
They want to be
if it's
played in the
meant
fourth quarter.
Yeah, if it's meant to show that these two are just ruthless killers that are like Terminators taking out the supply chain, it's maybe I could see that maybe, but it's interesting because of their demeanor. They don't come off to me as like
No, I think they're just assassins.
ruthless.
I think
they're
it's just
they're just. It almost kind of seems like they just took the jobs off Craigslist.
yeah, they're fill-ins. They're mercenaries, right? And Pat, I think to
They're-
your question, they probably used Mrs. Whistler to get the diamonds to Amsterdam. Or no, they killed her later.
Well, they killed her after she drops it off to Tiffany Case, but then they don't kill Tiffany Case. They're the best henchmen in the series and the worst at the same time.
But isn't Tiffany like working with Blofeld?
I don't think so. I don't know. She somehow knows. Well, that's the thing. Remember when she
That
gets
was weird.
kidnapped towards the end?
Yeah.
She somehow knows who Blofeld is because she starts following him, even though he's dressed up as a woman.
Yeah, right. And I was like, oh, I guess like she's been working with him the whole time? Because she's already at like the secret lair at the end with all the doubles.
Because she gets kidnapped.
Yeah, but
Or
like,
she gets taken hostage by
and
Blofeld.
at least you get that vibe, like, because she's like laying on this chair like naked, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe she's like in on it, but like, no.
That's not clear.
Okay.
I had a question about who Joe is, but I don't even think we should bother getting
'Cause it's
into that.
just-
It's just
makes no
not.
sense.
Here's the best and worst plot hole in the entire movie, I think, though. So after Bond impersonates Franks, ends up killing Franks because Franks gets loose, he is supposed to be the next part in the supply chain. His job is presumably smuggle the diamonds from Amsterdam to Las Vegas via Los Angeles. What was his plan for smuggling the diamonds into the States if it was supposed to go to a funeral home? Think about it like this. Bond and Tiffany, they only come up with the idea of smuggling the diamonds in the body after Franks accidentally shows up and Bond kills him. Remember, she even tells Bond at one point, she's like, can you please come up with something original for smuggling it? But they know they're going to a funeral home, and then good thing Peter Frank showed up and Bond kills him because now we can use his body.
It was, you said it earlier, we touched on it earlier. It's just Bond stumbling upon things.
Yeah, or
There's no intention.
that they won't check a body in the 1970s.
But he didn't have a plan to smuggle it until Frank showed. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
they were going to a funeral home, and presumably he
What was
knew
the
where to
initial plan
go.
before this body showed up?
Right.
Sounds like
I know what
was...
the plan was, and it's called bad writing.
Yeah, well, we didn't really know.
Why was Tiffany in the movie at all after that? There was really no reason for her to go with Bond to Los Angeles.
Yeah, like she didn't need to be in the movie. And then I kept... And the entire time she's just asking like, oh, what about me? What about me? And I'm like, Tiffany, you're just annoying. Like, you don't need to be here.
She's like, I can help.
Yeah.
Tries to fire a machine gun, can't.
Yeah. Like, what's happening here?
And then at one point at the very end, the finale where Wint and Kid show up, I don't know if you remember this. It just cuts to her and she's like, yee.
Yeah, she just yeets out of there, and it looks like she's just trying to get through the sliding door. Like, I'm out of here.
Look, the point we're making, if any of the listeners understand this plot, please write in and explain it to us, because we sure as hell don't.
Yeah, there's a lot of holes in there, but again, it's a movie of assumptions, so you make it what you want it to be.
There's a lot of movies that try to make a bit more mystery and then have the moviegoer piece it together, but usually I think it's done in a more intelligent way.
I think we just put more thought into it than they did when they were writing it.
I think that's not an inaccurate statement.
No. Okay. We touched on this too. Willard White was just being held captive by a pair of gymnasts for years, apparently. He hadn't been seen in years, and he was just in that house for years, apparently. It's never explained why Saxby, Willard White's right-hand man, why he would collaborate with Blofeld in the first place. Yeah. What is he getting out of it?
Is he getting corrupted?
Blofeld somehow escapes from Las Vegas to Baja, California, completely undetected. Remember, this is like Bin Laden they're looking for.
And they found him on James Bond just found him on an oil rig?
They presumed that Blofeld was still using White's empire as a cover, and he lists all the possible locations, and that's when...
Needed a place that was isolated.
Willard White's like, Baja? I haven't got anything in Baja.
Got it.
The only thing that was clear is that Blofeld is using diamonds for a space laser.
That's kind of what I got. Also, listen, I don't know. I don't understand the chemistry. How did diamonds make a space laser more powerful? Does it just like bend the light?
I know that diamonds can be used in lasers. I don't know how, but I do know that that's at least somewhat rooted in reality.
Okay. His idea is to build a giant space laser to essentially blackmail every nuclear power at the time, which was 3, into paying him a ton of money to control the key for nuclear power.
Right. Because there's no way that any of those countries could have just made more nukes. Foolproof plan.
Checks out to me. Told you. Spin-off.
Yeah.
Disney Plus spin-off.
And this is I want to give this next bit credit to my wife for asking the question. The Blofeld doubles thing, it's pretty memorable. It's pretty funny, but it doesn't really have a payoff.
Yeah, there's a lot of them too.
What's the point?
I don't know.
He's already stolen Willard White's identity and his empire. Like, why does he need doubles at all?
Wait, and the voice changers? The voice changers?
Oh, that part. Oh,
the voice changers are what take down this criminal enterprise. This is what helps Bond get the master killer. Like the guy.
A voice box, Mr.
Is
Bond.
it a voice changer? And it comes
a voice box
after.
I do so hate marching music.
Wait, this guy must be the worst criminal enterprise, the criminal mastermind ever. After he
He's
uses a voice changer to impersonate someone, he gets tricked by someone else using a voice changer? Are you kidding me?
what's the problem with your voice, bud? Have you got a cold?
Bird doesn't usually get worried.
He's like, what does he say at the end, too? He has that good line. He's like, right now, the laser's over Kansas. Well, if we destroyed Kansas, it would be years before anybody heard about it. He's not a very threatening villain.
He's really not.
No,
Charles Gray.
no.
And that's the thing. He is the guy from You Only Live Twice, and we really liked him in that movie. Don't really know why they brought him back other than the fact that he was probably cheap.
I think that's fair. Because he's not really memorable. He's just kind of there.
It's not clear how Tiffany knows Q. Like, remember she keeps calling him Mr. Q in that one scene right before she gets kidnapped. She's like, "Hey there, Mr. Q." It's not. She's never met him before. How? Like, I guess Bond maybe mentioned him to her, but this plot is a train wreck.
Yeah. I guess now that I'm even looking at some of the notes here, I'm like, hey, I guess you're right. It's worse than I thought it was.
Yeah, aesthetically too, Blofeld looking so different from film to film, that also threw me off.
I will give it credit for that. That does follow the novels, because in the novels he's constantly drastically changing his appearance to avoid detection. So at least that sort of made sense.
That makes more sense now that it's
Yeah,
been cleared up. But
again,
I
like,
feel like
there's
for
no
the
explanation
film,
of that in
right.
the film.
The context
I
of
mean,
the time, they're probably also. I think this falls under plot. Lack of Bond elements. Was the Bond car the Mustang, Mach 1?
it sure was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. That is the first time it has been an American car.
No, it's the first time that he is probably driving an American car. I'd have to think about that though. But they had a deal with Ford going back to Goldfinger.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
there's Ford vehicles all over the Bond series.
Okay, so that would explain because I've only ever seen one
Yeah.
other one and I don't think I noticed it.
I actually liked the Mustang. First of all, that's a really cool old school Mach 1 Mustang, and it does make sense that he would be driving that in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, shout out to the Chinese weather balloon that was in the movie. Too soon? Probably too soon. Okay.
Oh,
Did you notice any of the random safety signs that were on the oil rig?
No, actually.
yeah, what was up with that?
Okay, you noticed them, Anton?
Yeah.
Okay. One of them said, "If in doubt, ask."
Oh, okay, got it.
Another one of them said, "No pollution, not any."
Just
Perfect
yeah.
place for an oil rig.
Of course. Why aren't Wint and Kit on the oil rig? They just completely disappear from the film for like 40 minutes and they just show up on the end on the cruise ship.
You think they'd be there for the big battle, right?
No.
Right. You'd think. Okay, here's the part. This is the explanation for you, Pete. So you probably noticed this because we're really taking this film apart. The climax just ends without any resolution. Blofeld's fate is never revealed. We never get a proper conclusion to the story besides Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd trying to kill Bond on the cruise ship. That's it.
And the movie just ends.
That's it.
Well, this is why. Connery had a clause in his contract that for every week that they went over schedule, he was going to earn an additional $150,000. So they made every effort not to, and they just finished on time. There was supposed to be a boat chase filmed on Lake Mead following the oil rig scene. And because they didn't want to pay Connery anymore and go over schedule, they were just like, eh.
Wait. And is this 150 grand in 1970s money?
Yes.
Jesus.
Gets a lot.
150 grand a week.
That's disgusting. Yeah. Okay, wrap it up. We're done here. But we didn't finish the movie. That's fine. Just we're done.
Yep. They were like, yeah.
That explains a lot more in the film than we'd like to think.
Yeah, because it kind of like the movie was just like puttering along, and then like the last 20 minutes, some like really cool spy stuff happens. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then you're like, oh, maybe this is like one of the Mission Impossible, like part 1, part 2 things. And then you're like, wait, it's done?
The oil rig climax is about as lame as it gets. There's no tension. It's weirdly paced. Like when he's throwing the crane around to knock Blofeld's little submarine into
thing.
like into a wall. It's really slow and weird. It's got some of the shoddiest special effects I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
It looked like a 1950s B movie.
Yeah, it wasn't. It definitely.
And it's a shame because compare that to the climax of You Only Live Twice.
Mhm.
How awesome was that ninja army storming the volcano lair?
It's kind of sweet.
It's way cooler.
Yeah.
Way cooler.
Way cooler. And that climax, we agreed on that episode. That climax holds up today completely.
Yeah.
But here, you could tell they were really running out of money.
Yeah. They definitely phoned it in at the end of the movie. That's for sure.
And you see that with all of the special effects throughout the film. It's just looking really cheap.
Awful. And that brings us to the next reason, right? Which is the production itself. This movie looks cheap.
Dude,
yes.
This is something that I noticed too. There was sometimes like long periods of silence. Now, I don't know if this is a product of the movie of the 70s, but like there are some scenes where it's just like quiet, like where music would go to kind of set the mood and the tone of the scene. It's just quiet, and it's like Connery just walking around and like doing spy stuff and like flipping people over. Like that felt really awkward.
Yeah, I think this film is paced pretty awkwardly in parts.
Okay, so I'm glad.
I think that it is a product of its time,
Yeah.
but not all of them were like that because, again, to compare it to You Only Live Twice, that film did not really have pacing issues,
That's fair.
except for the Japanese wedding. That was a little,
That was
yeah.
a little out of place.
I mean, they had Connery back for this. It was a studio decision, but you read it in the production history of this when you do the research. His salary was so proportionally enormous that they didn't really have a lot of budget left for anything else, and you can tell. I mean, real quick on the pacing again, it's tough. The scenes in Circus, they're really boring. All the stuff with the cards and the wisecracking kids, it just feels like we're in a completely different movie at that
Yeah, they
point.
were just. I feel like they just shot scenes to shot scenes. Like there must have been something in the contract that was like, we need to make the movie 2 hours.
Well, there's something about that kind of makes me think if in production they put together the plot, they realized this thing's not going to fill up the runtime. They were like, well, okay, what if we made it a really elaborate supply chain for the diamond smuggling? Or, okay, we'll have lots of shots in Vegas and in the circus. I could see that. And that actually explains a lot more of like, why do we even just have all this elaborate fluff that actually leads to nowhere?
It's a really good theory, Anton. What if we added this guy named Shady Tree?
Weird name choice. Very odd.
Yeah.
Uh,
Not only can we add him, let's show his absolutely terrible comedy act.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like that dude was really old in 1970.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to assume he fought in World War One.
Yeah,
Like
or like the Civil War.
Civil
Kidding.
War.
the Spanish-American War at the very least.
Yeah,
There's a throwback
that's
for you,
true.
history buffs.
All right.
Rough Riders, San Juan Hill, baby. Anton, speaking of Circus, that is
Yes.
one of the first places that I visited on my first trip to Las Vegas because
Oh.
of this film. And it's a complete shithole. I was depressed for the 10 minutes that I spent in there. If anyone is going to Las Vegas for the first time and you're thinking, wow, Circus, that was in a Bond movie, maybe I should check that out. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Not good.
Just don't do it. I don't know how it's still open. It's one of those places where you're not sure how the money's flowing in.
You know what I just realized, Pat? This movie's like Archer.
In a way.
Yeah, it's like Bond's out there, he's drinking, he's gambling, he's having a good time, but he's stumbling his way through being a secret agent. And it shows up. He shows up when he needs to prevent nuclear oblivion. How? We don't know, but we'll watch it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can really see where things like Archer and Austin Powers, they took a lot from this.
Yes.
And You Only Live Twice.
Yeah.
The performances in this film, this is one of the first Bond movies in the series where I think the acting was pretty bad across the board. Connery's hilarious, but I'm not sure that there's another good performance in the film other than Jimmy Dean as Willard White.
Yeah, and I mean, again, surprisingly, a performance that I really enjoyed.
Charles Gray, terrible Blofeld.
Yeah. You got to give a shout out to Q, though. I liked Q. Come on, you can't hate on Q.
Yeah, I mean, Q's fine. He's, in the movie for, 2 minutes.
Honestly, that's all you need.
That's true.
Keen movie watchers will recognize Charles Gray as the narrator from the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen him in other things. This is probably his his biggest role, right? I would think.
I would think.
Again, I don't think he was expensive. I'll say this about Charles Gray. I don't think he's very good, but he was playing it the way they wrote it. They were probably like, Charles, he's like, do you need me to play it like Telly Savalas or Donald Pleasance? And they're like, no. Just be as goofy as possible.
It's like they really needed him in drag.
Right idea, Mr. Bond, but wrong pushy.
Oh, Bond just kicks a cat. Oh my god.
Nice try.
Another weird death scene.
Yeah.
You press L, Mr. Bond. The word lobby begins with the letter L.
Also, why is Blofeld so obsessed with telling him all of his elaborate schemes? I feel like that was always one of the biggest question marks for me.
This is where the series really started to get into that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait,
the villain trope.
So now that you're
He
here,
doesn't-
you're gonna
he-
tell me everything?
he-
I feel like you shouldn't do that. You should just execute the plan, because then there's a lower. But he also came up with this really elaborate supply chain, so I guess it makes sense.
Right. This one probably has the villain with the most opportunities to kill Bond, and they just try to kill him in some really strange, elaborate, exotic ways.
Mm.
Like Winton Kid, first they knock him out and they put him in the crematorium, and then later he gets in the elevator and they knock him out with some knockout gas, and then they leave him in a pipeline in the middle of the desert instead of just killing him.
They're not very good assassins.
They're not. Like I said, they're the best henchmen and the worst. Jill St. John, she was the first American Bond girl. She does not do her country proud.
No, not at all.
It's a confusing performance, right? She's very wooden. Not that you don't need Shakespeare from a Bond girl, but like I thought the character was written so strangely too, because when she's first introduced in her apartment, she seems pretty street smart.
Yeah.
And then she turns into a complete buffoon by the time this movie's over.
Yeah. But she's also linked to like a high-end diamond smuggling, right?
That's what I mean. Like she seems to be smart early on, and then every scene she's in, she just gets dumber and dumber to the point where she just goes, "Ee!" Did you like her gas station scene though?
Yeah. What?
You
Sorry,
better
Curly.
quit leaning in that tutor, Charlie, or I'll give you something to shout about.
I was like, that's what people said in the 70s. I was like, all right, well, I guess we'll have those same tropes too. I guess, and then people will laugh at us like we're old. We're just like 30 now, but by the time we're 60, they'll be like, remember those millennials?
I did enjoy the car chase too in Vegas. That was pretty fun.
That was cool.
I like the sheriff. There goes that son of a bitch and saboteur. Anton, what did you think of Norman Burton as Felix Leiter?
Kind of annoying, honestly.
Yeah, not great. Not one of the better ones.
Not classy. Didn't come off as appealing. Definitely not one of the better ones.
No, that's for sure.
Is he the worst Felix Leiter?
Ooh, I mean,
I think he is.
He's really, he's fair statement, because when I think about it, usually Felix is kind of a more he's cooler for the most part.
He's no Jeffrey Wright.
He started off super cool. Jack Lord was Felix Leiter in Dr. No, like a really cool dude. And then we get this guy. Anton, he is going to pop up in another film we are covering this season.
Oh, fantastic.
He is in The Towering Inferno. He plays the electrical engineer who gets roasted. And Paul Newman tries to put him out and he dies.
Wow, so sad.
That's Norman Burton. Yeah. Pete, have you seen The Towering Inferno?
No, actually.
Oh, you need to. If you like old school disaster movies, which, you might.
I actually just picked up Backdraft, which was a movie that I watched.
Yeah, that's a cool movie.
I'm going to rewatch it.
That's a 90s classic, Backdraft.
Underrated Donald Sutherland performance in that movie.
Yeah, that's right. I love Donald Sutherland.
Did it look at you? It did. Yeah, Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, just let's just share your thoughts.
I think like they are my favorite henchmen, and just the dialogue that they have together is just so off the wall, but also just so well done. Their cadence of speaking, they're just so entertaining. I really enjoyed them. But their actual purpose in the film just felt like it was everywhere.
It's very unclear how big of a part they're supposed to play in Blofeld's plan, right? They drift in and drift out. But Anton, I agree with you. They really are iconic. They're hilarious.
Yeah, a lot of one-liners, and they do fit the part of assassins, right? They look. I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
They do.
I kind of see them having the look more of like just regular dudes.
Nah,
and that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
I see Wall Street,
and I feel like that
serial killer.
You're saying Putter Smith's the serial killer
for sure.
Putter Smith, the jazz musician who wasn't an actor to begin with.
That's so funny.
Hey, you're gonna be in this movie. All right.
And then they're both poorly acted, but I do think it works for the film. Like Bruce Glover is hamming it up to no end. Anton, you know who he is, right?
Bruce Glover?
Yeah.
Please inform.
You know who Crispin Glover is?
Yes, the father of Marty McFly's dad.
Yep, that's his dad. That's his dad.
There we go. Wow.
Yeah, okay. So when they try to kill Bond at the end, Blofeld was dead at that point.
Which, lol. So he tried to kill
agent? LOL. Who would know if Blofeld was dead? Yeah. I don't know. This would start a trend, Anton, that extends to the next two films, which are coincidentally written by Mankiewicz as well, where the henchman survives and tries to kill Bond at the end.
Oh yeah, that's a really good call out. Except this time I think it played out kind of hilariously.
It sure did. I really like how Bond calls them out on the wine thing to expose them. where he says like, "Oh, I would have expected a claret for this meal," and then what does Wint say? Like,
They're
"Oh,
like,
our cellar was
shout.
poorly stocked with clarets. Mouton
Yeah.
Rothschild is a claret," and I've smelled that aftershave before, and both times I've smelled a rat.
And then Mr. Kidd proceeded to take the 2 kebabs on fire and
Yes,
stab
That
them.
was hilarious.
What?
that
Great
is
kill scene.
one of the funniest things I've ever
Yeah,
seen.
great kill scene.
Like, what?
Great attempt, man. Great attempt.
Yeah, the acting really is terrible, and I do think somehow the standout is Jimmy Dean.
God, what's his fortune worth, by the way?
It's probably a lot. I mean, I'm there's probably no way he's alive at this
He's got to
point,
be
but
dead, right?
yeah. But yeah, it's amazing like how like Jimmy Dean like still I'm not a huge aficionado of frozen breakfast sausages, but I mean his are in every grocery store in America as far as I
I mean,
know.
that's like iconic, right? Like people don't have like tissues they use. They have Kleenex. Like you don't like you're going to get a Jimmy Dean sausage. That's like your parents tell you go get breakfast sausage. You're like, all right, I'll get Jimmy Dean. That's it. There's no
Right.
other name that we know within our lifetime.
It's such a strange casting decision, but I have to say it works because I'm trying to think how to articulate this. He really does seem like a billionaire, business empire owner.
He was a Silicon Valley guy years before his time.
Right. But remember when they show up in the lab and he's ordering the guys around like, draw it for me. And then Anton, Shane Rimmer. Did you catch Shane Rimmer in this?
I did not.
Oh,
He's the control room technician. He's the guy that's talking to Willard White, and he's like, I even recognize your voice just now, Shane Rimmer.
oh yes.
He always plays a control room technician. He's the old guy in Batman Begins.
Mhm.
He's in You Only Live Twice.
Yes.
He's going to pop up as the sub-captain in The Spy Who Loved Me.
Mentioned him in the last episode. Yep.
He's in Superman 2 as the NASA control room technician. I just wanted to give him a shout out.
What?
Yeah, he's in a bunch of stuff. You know what was legendary? The title song. It is a banger.
Yeah.
It is.
Was
it
that
is
is that where it comes
pretty
from?
iconic.
This movie?
The Kanye song?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, that's where
Yeah.
it samples.
Yep.
Okay. And this is
Yep.
the original of that song for this movie.
Yes, of course.
All right, that's what I thought. I forgot.
Kanye wrote it in 1971.
Obviously, I know that. I meant like I didn't know if anyone played it before or like was this song exclusively written for this movie and that's where it came from and that's why it's so popular today.
Right.
Obviously, I know Kanye didn't time travel, but he may think he time traveled.
Well, he might have. Yeah, he might think he did.
That's all that matters. As long as you believe it,
Right. It's not a lie if you believe
It's
it.
not a lie if you believe it. It's like gambling. It's not gambling if you know you're gonna win.
Right. Yeah, I really like this song. It's one of the best title songs in the whole series. It's I'd say it's a pretty famous song too. Most people would recognize it, probably because of the Kanye sample at this point, but it does have a life of its own. And the John Barry score, Anton, what did you think of it?
It's surprising because, knowing John Barry's attached to it, I would have expected it to be of that same like high caliber of score. But it was all right. I think like at some points it was not doing it for me, if that's fair.
I think it's a weird score. I like parts of it, but I'm with you. It's I mean, I guess they can't all be good, right? Like they all can't be of equal quality. I'd put this as my least favorite Barry score in the series.
Is it another, does it suffer from it can't be the budget, right? It's like maybe it's a rush job.
Well, I don't think it's a rush job because when we get to it, they only gave him 2 weeks to compose the score for Man with the Golden Gun, and I really like that score.
Right.
Now, it is subjective, of course, but this one just doesn't do it for me. It's got some really weird themes. It's sparsely paced. Pete, you pointed this out earlier. There's just large sections of the film where there's no music, and I'm not quite sure why, because these films are very famous for their music.
Yeah, it's just very odd. Like there's entire spy scenes where he's doing spy stuff, and it's just all you hear is like dress shoes hitting the floor, and I'm like, this isn't as cool without music as you think it is. It reminds me of that THX commercial that came out with years ago, where they played like half the THX logo, and they were like, sound is half the equation, and I was like.
Oh, you're talking about the scene in Hannibal where he slashes the guy's throat open?
Yes, that right there, right? So like, so also tune into that episode, listeners. There's a good guest on there.
Yes, agreed.
So yeah, it's odd.
The moon buggy chase scene,
hilarious.
Like, I don't know what instrument that was, but it was like ba-dam, ba-dam, ba-dam. It's just goofy cartoon music.
It's like they pulled it from Looney Tunes.
Well, this movie is Looney Tunes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it really is. Anton, the wardrobe in the series, again, uneven.
Not uneven, not inspiring. I mean, which is interesting because this was like kind of at the tail end of the golden age of like Vegas, but it didn't have any of that razzle dazzle. It felt seedy.
I do like some of the suits that he wears in this. When he meets M and Sir Donald, he's got this really nice gray flannel suit on with like a light purple tie. I think that really looks good. That's aged well.
Yeah.
He's got a gray suit on later with a black tie at one point in Vegas. That looks good. But then he has that outfit. I think it's like a cream suit, and he's got that short pink tie. Like that just looks just horrific.
Yeah,
Looks a little dated.
not ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite outfit that he wears is actually in the pre-title sequence. He's wearing this brown, what's called a Norfolk jacket. Shout out to bondsuits.com for breaking all this down. That's where I get most of the information on what he wears.
Oh, nice.
The
I was just gonna.
the webmaster of that site, bondsuits.com, he does such a thorough job of breaking down every outfit in every film in the series. If you're ever curious about Bond is wearing what in which movie, that is pretty much the only website that you need. But underneath that jacket, he's got like a black polo on. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the outfits, to your point, Anton, we were at the tail end of the golden age in Vegas. I think it's safe to say 70s fashion has aged far worse than classic 60s fashion. Like if you really think about, I'm not talking about the hippie era in the late 60s. Most of the stuff from like the early and mid 60s looks great today.
Like you're talking advertising in Wall Street.
I don't just mean the suits, but I mean just a lot of just classic menswear.
Yeah.
Was present in the 60s, and that stuff never goes out of style.
Yep,
Yeah,
totally.
and it's
agree.
like the 70s were like it seems like you
Yeah.
can see in the movie, it just feels like that awkward teenager year.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get to the Roger Moore era, soon enough, but the flared trousers would really start in Live and Let Die, and they would not let up until the 80s. Although there's some gems in Roger Moore. Roger Moore is probably the best dressed Bond, in my opinion, but you could do a whole podcast on that too. Man, I mean, we've been pretty harsh on this, although we seem to be enjoying ourselves here. I mean, anything to add about the production?
No, I mean, it's so funny when Pat, when you messaged, I'll give you $100 if you can describe the plot. I was thinking, I can't, and I still can't.
Right. No, you could describe the plot, but it's not good and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of holes.
Is there anything about the plot that makes sense? I don't know that there is. We haven't even talked about Plenty O'Toole just being dead in the pool.
Diamonds
Right.
and lasers. That's about I think as far as we go with sense. And I think that's still pushing it unless you're a chemist.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the continuity issues.
There's too many.
Yeah, there's just
Like, where do you start?
Yeah.
It is not a coincidence. This is the lowest rated entry in the Connery era. It stands at a 63% Rotten Tomatoes score.
Wow, that's still impressive though.
It's not bad,
Yeah,
but again, of all the Connery films, it is the lowest.
okay. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
It's still surprising though. I've seen stuff with way worse.
Oh, for sure. Look, it's the worst plot in the series. I don't think it's the worst film in the series. Not even close.
Like,
Well, it actually might be close.
well, shall we go in and dive in of did we like it?
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up. Peter, as the guest, would you like to go first?
I will go first today. I will. So, a few things. I think listener disclosure. I think you guys got to understand, and gals, understand where it's being criticized from. I think it was watchable, different, but I had a lot of questions. At times, it felt kind of weird. Overall, that didn't really feel like a Bond movie to me. I'm gonna give it a solid C minus.
Oh, okay. That is
Surprising.
a little better than I thought
Surprising, right?
you would
I
give
know,
it.
I know, because it just feels like Airplane, and once I have to respect that it didn't take itself too seriously, and I don't want to be too harsh. And I watch a lot of bad movies, and this was by far not the worst I've ever seen. And I actually think I gave Hannibal like a D plus or something. So I'm giving it a
We talked you down to a D, I
yeah.
think.
You did. You negotiated down to
Yeah.
a D and all that. I don't think this is D material. I think it's C minus. And so listeners understand, I watch a lot of bad horror movies. So my like passable movie level is probably lower than the average human being because most horror movies are kind of crappy. But I'll watch them anyway.
Fair. I'll go next here. This is tricky to rate for me because, all right, let me break this down. So Moonraker is often cited as the silliest film in the series. I put this far sillier than Moonraker because as ridiculous as Moonraker is, the plot is at least easy to follow and it moves in a linear fashion. The plot in this film does not make a lick of sense. I think if you wanted to judge a film based on plot alone, this is borderline F. There's
Damn.
really nothing about it that makes any sense whatsoever. I don't think the acting's very good. I think a lot of the jokes are horribly dated and it looks really cheap. A lot of this film just looks like crap. There's some inventive production design in the sets and some of the vehicle design, which I'll give it credit for there, but a lot of it just looks seedy. Everything looks like it's made out of polyester almost. It's an objectively bad movie. I think if I was rating this just as a movie and not as a Bond movie, I'd probably give it a D or D plus. But for whatever reason, it captures something in the series. It was a strange time in the series. It is a outlier. If you watch it as a comedy and as sort of the sequel to You Only Live Twice, I do find it pretty watchable. And although I think it is one of the weakest entries in the series, it is one of the ones that I rewatch the most, and I can't really explain it why, other than I just find it personally amusement. I take plenty of personal amusement from this. It's a stink bomb of a movie, but because it's so much of an outlier and it's hilariously quotable, and Connery is so checked out that I think his performance works, I have to agree with you, Pete. It's a C minus for me.
Wow. Let's go.
Wow.
Let's
Nice.
Yeah.
go. Okay.
Again, objectively a bad
Yeah.
movie, but I find it hilariously watchable.
I was literally sitting here listening to you say all these things and completely at the beginning, and I was like, I wonder where he's going with this. I was like, you can't go. And then I was like, C minus. I was like, let's go. I was like, I think that's reasonable. I think you summed it up perfectly.
It's so
Yeah,
quotable.
it is. It is. A lot of things don't age well, right? You got to take it with a grain of salt. If the movie tried to take itself seriously, I think it'd be a huge issue. It doesn't.
All right. Well, I don't want to tread on the same path, but I feel like it's very clear that there were a lot of things not going for this film, and it was one Mike Myers away from being another entry in the Austin Powers series. But at the same time, like, it was entertaining, and I feel like, considering that, and the fact that there is like a very strong watchability to it, there is merit to that. And particularly when I think of other films in the Bond series that I would personally rank, like even like the Craig era, I would rather watch this. And it's just so surprising because, like, despite the plot holes, it is still it is quite more entertaining. I think that Sean Connery, I totally agree with you, Pat, that brings a lot to this film. There's just a natural charisma that makes this watchable, and for a lot of folks, a classic. So I totally agree. And just to put it simply, I'm also at a C minus.
Wow.
Whoa, C minus across the board.
I think that's fair, gentlemen. I do. I think our discussion was
Yeah.
reasonable. I think the points we've presented are effective rebuttals for it being the greatest movie ever. I don't think anything's misplaced. I think C minus is fair. I do. It's good to see consensus on the movie.
Yeah, we don't always need to have consensus,
true.
but it is nice to
It is true.
have sometimes. Anton, I'm with you 100% on comparing this to some of the Craig films. I think No Time to Die is a far better film than this, but this is so much more fun to watch for me.
Right. No, totally agree. And I had to look at my old scores too to just kind of think objectively, where does that ranking go? And we do talk about watchability. So
Watchability matters. It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Because
it doesn't necessarily equate with quality, because there are, I mean, like Schindler's List is an A+ movie, but not the most watchable.
yeah, it's tough.
We mentioned how this was a big money maker. I wanted to end with this because this is the Anton, we've talked about how lazily and slowly they're making the Bond films at this point. Well, this is how they did things back then. This film made a lot of money. Broccoli and Saltzman, they knew from the get-go that Connery was only going to be back for this one film. He did this for the money, and he was very open about that. So Broccoli and Saltzman, they wasted no time in getting the next era of Bond started. They immediately hired Roger Moore, and they almost immediately went into pre-production for Live and Let Die. So this was released around Christmas 1971. Live and Let Die was released 18 months after this in June 1973. And then The Man with the Golden Gun was released 18 months after that in December 74. So basically, they produced 3 films in less than 4 years. Pretty serious work ethic from them. This was Eon going full throttle with the James Bond series. We are never going to get that again, and it's a shame.
Yeah, instead we're going to get Brian Cox narrating James Bond themed game shows. for now.
Yeah.
Also on the spin-offs of MGM Plus.
That is it for Diamonds Are Forever. Peter, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure talking Bond with you. You're a Bond veteran now on the
I
podcast.
appreciate it. Honestly, it's really cool for me because I'm getting to see movies that I've never seen before, which is really cool. And it's a character that I enjoy, and I'm getting to see the progression in the series. Like I've already seen. It's like watching. I was gonna say watching Star Wars in reverse, but I'm pretty sure that's how they work. But it's
Yep.
Yeah.
it's like watching Bond in reverse, right? So,
Yeah.
and I enjoy it because I see what it's become. I've seen it in its peak. I've seen what it's become. I've seen where it went, and now I'm seeing all the pieces to get to there, which is pretty cool.
Well, Pete, it is always a treat having you on the show, and we're just so excited for you and your growing family.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you guys. It's my pleasure, and I know we'll be watching a ton of movies because I don't think you do much in the beginning of the phase. So I will do my best to contribute as much as I can. But I look forward to being back. Hopefully, you guys will have me.
We'll have you back
We
whenever
will.
you want. If you think that you have the time to do it, let us know. We'll have you back as whenever you want.
Let me run that by my wife because it's going to be
Of course. Yeah.
gonna unfortunately be something I may have to negotiate.
Well, don't forget. So she needs to watch Diamonds Are Forever and weigh in on the very serious medical questions that we have regarding plastic surgery.
She just got home a little while ago, so I'm gonna ask her that when we get downstairs, and she's gonna look at me like I have 6 heads and be like, "I'm a GI doctor. I have no idea what you're talking about."
Well, she has more of an idea than us.
Correct, because I don't. And apparently, if it's just mud, that doesn't seem too hard.
Making mud pies, 007?
So good discussion, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Yes, as always. And that is it for this edition of Why Wasn't It Better? We have no idea what the next episode you will be hearing is because we're recording this months in advance. So whatever ends up being next, enjoy it.
Let's go.
Cheers.